There's a verse at the end of the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni Posada or Sojam that says, listening to the Dharma and practicing it are the surest cause for peace. Harmony of the assembly is the surest factor for nirvana. Liberating sentient beings from suffering is the utmost happiness. And I think there's a tremendous meaning in this as we look deeply. So listening to the Dharma and practicing it are the surest cause for peace. So in terms of our personal practice, we need to hear the teachings, think about them, meditate on them, do our own personal practice, and that's the surest cause for peace. Peace here meaning the peace of nirvana. Okay? But our own practice and our own spiritual realizations are not the only purpose of becoming ordained or the only purpose of our practice. The second sentence says, harmony of the assembly is the surest factor for nirvana. So when the Buddha created the Sangha, he created a community. So of course any community is a group of individuals, but they function together as a community. And so that's been something very important for 2,600 years, to get in our minds that we are part of a community. We are part of something that is bigger than ourselves. So that our becoming ordained isn't just about taking precepts and keeping precepts and having good conditions for our own personal practice, but our being ordained is joining a community and then together with that community doing something that we can't do on our own. Okay? What is it that a community does that we can't do individually? Is it acts as a light that society can see. And so this is the difference between having a monastery and having lay teachers. Okay? Lay teachers are fantastic and they help many people. But when people are thinking, when they live in other places and they have troubles and they think of where can I go to get spiritual guidance, they don't necessarily think of a lay person's house, because they could, ring the doorbell of their teacher's house and their spouse comes to the door and says, this isn't a good time, our kids are crying, I've got to get dinner on the table, my spouse is busy, doing the taxes, and, please come back later. Okay? Whereas the public, the people in society, they can always come to a monastery, and we are here to serve them. We are here to help them. Okay? And like I mentioned the other day, we get letters from people who have never been here, who just say thank you for existing, because we think of people trying to create virtue and meditating on compassion and wisdom in society, and we think of you, because when there's a group of people, what you're doing becomes more apparent to society than if there's an individual. In the same way, it's like they give the analogy of trying to sweep the floor with one strand of grass versus putting many strands together and sweeping with a broom. There's a big difference. Yeah. So, whether we're part of a community of people that live together, or we still are a part of the community of the Sangha of 10 directions. And so to hold that in our hearts, that being ordained is not just doing our own thing. And this is particularly difficult for Westerners for two reasons. First, we come from a society that values individualism very much, and we were all brought up to be individuals, but of course in a very conformist way. You're supposed to be an individual, but not too far out. Okay, and we have magazines called The Self, and of course there's the iPod and the iPhone and the everything. Yeah, so we're raised in a culture that emphasizes individuality, and that makes it difficult for us in our minds to have a feeling of community, and also practically to create community. Yeah, so that's one factor. Second thing is, to be a Western nun, you need to have a certain amount of stubbornness in your mind, a certain amount of individuality, because if you were the kind of person who just did what everybody wanted you to do, you would be married and have kids and have a career because that's what society expects of you. Yeah? So all of us, to some extent or another, some earlier in our lives, some later in our lives after having a family, kind of said, well, no, I'm going to do things differently. Yeah. So that brings a certain amount of, and you have to be very clear about your motivation, and it requires a good kind of stubbornness, not the kind of stubbornness that's a brick wall if I'm not listening to anybody, not that close-minded kind of stubbornness, but the kind of, I've thought about this, I know what I'm doing, and I know you don't agree, and that's okay, but it's not going to influence my mind, because what I'm doing is really important. Yeah. So, we come, we're a select group. We're not the typical Western women who come to ordination, are we? Yeah. And so that too, on one hand, it gives us the strength to take ordination and to remain ordained. On the other hand, it makes it difficult to be part of a community because that individualism is very strong. Okay? If you're a Tibetan and you ordain, your family doesn't, say, what in the world are you doing? I'm never going to speak to you again, like might happen here. Yeah, your family says, fantastic, that's very good, we support you. Okay? And nobody in society thinks you're crazy. Nobody says Hare Krishna to you when you walk down the road. Yeah. Nobody says, sir, what would you like to drink when you're on the airplane? Yeah. Nobody gasps when you're in the woman's bathroom. Yeah.
Or say the chemo your hair will grow back.
Yeah, the one I get all the time, people patting me on the back. Really, very compassionate of, don't worry, dear, when the chemo finishes, your hair will come back. Yeah? So, in Tibetan society, Chinese society, you don't get that kind of stuff. Yeah? But we do. So there has to be a certain, inner determination. Maybe stubbornness isn't the right word. Maybe it's more a very firm determination, okay, that we need. But sometimes that makes us, find it difficult to be part of a community. Okay, but here the Buddha said, the harmony of the assembly is the surest factor for nirvana. Now that sounds funny. Shouldn't our own practice be the surest factor for nirvana? Shouldn't my practice, me finding the best conditions for practice, the best teacher, finding the most time to study and think and meditate. Shouldn't my practice and what I'm interested in and what I want to do and my development of compassion be the most important factor for nirvana? That's what we think. Yeah. When I was a baby nun, I remember very clearly being talking. I was in Nepal. I was talking to a monk about I don't know what, but my mind was thinking, I really don't want to talk to you. I want to be in my room meditating on compassion. Yeah. So that shows the level of my mind, doesn't it? How separate my mind was from the actual meaning of the Dharma. Yeah. Just my practice, what I want to do, what's best for me. And talking to you, I don't feel like doing it, but I want to meditate on compassion for all sentient beings. Okay? So here, Buddha is saying the harmony of the assembly is the surest factor for nirvana. Yeah? If you think about it, yeah, the assembly, the Sangha community, historically has been given, its role has been not only to study and meditate on the teachings, but to teach them, to preserve the tradition for future generations. Yeah, being part of the Sangha isn't just about our own practice. It's about preserving something very precious for the future. And we have the privilege of being ordained because countless people in the past, preserved the ordination lineage, preserved the teaching lineages, all these kinds of things, because they had an eye to preserving the Dharma for the future. That's what enables us to come along and meet the Dharma, to have the Dharma existent in the world, and especially to be able to receive ordination. So we have a job to preserve this for future generations. And if we're fortunate, we may be part of that future generation. Yeah? But even not, it's other people get to benefit, and that's the purpose, And so to preserve the teachings for the future, the Sangha has to be harmonious. If the Sangha is quarreling, if everybody's just saying, but I want it done this way, and my way is right, and I'm not going to listen to you because you don't know what you're talking about, then how is any practice going to get done? Yeah, think about it. Yeah, how are we going to even study if there's disharmony? How are we going to have our mind calm enough to meditate if there's disharmony? Yeah, it's not going to happen. Yeah, so keeping the harmony is the surest factor for nirvana. And you read, in the canon of the monks at Kosambi, and they were quarreling so much. I forget about what they were quarreling. They probably forgot too, because the quarrel takes over the purpose of the argument. They were just combative, and the Buddha tried to talk to them, tried to calm them down, tried to get them to become more harmonious. They wouldn't even listen to the Buddha. So the Buddha finally said, okay, guys, bye-bye. And he walked into the forest. Yeah? So we have to think, what happens if the Sangha community becomes so individualistic, where each of us is insisting on having our own way, then, Buddha's going to say bye-bye. And, we're going to be left like the U.S. Congress is right now, blaming each other. That's what they're doing. So Friday, they couldn't come to a vote, so Saturday, everybody's pointing fingers at the other one. Yeah. So that's why, harmony in the assembly is so important. And then liberating sentient beings from suffering is the utmost happiness. So this is coming from the Dharma Guptaka Vinaya. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's in the ceremonies of the other Vinayas, but one reason the Chinese chose the Dharma Guptaka, aside from the fact that the emperor, declared that one, was that it was very harmonious with Mahayana, and Mahayana had become very popular in China. And so liberating sentient beings from suffering is the utmost happiness. That's definitely Mahayana, isn't it? Yeah. The Theravada, the Pali tradition has it too, but this is kind of an emphasis in the Mahayana. And so how are we going to get our utmost happiness? Yeah, by helping other sentient beings to attain liberation. How do we do that? Through our own practice and through the community practice of preserving the Dharma. So it all fits together. We got an email today that Venerable Sumton forwarded. There's one man in Hungary, of all places. Yeah, how many Buddhists do you think there are in Hungary?
One at least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, but he gave a donation for the program for living with living Vinaya in the West, and Venerable Sumton had sent him a thank you, and saying that we're grateful and we depend on these kinds of things. And he wrote back and he said, he's never been here. We've never met him, but he says, I'm sure that my donations are being used in a very wise way, and you people are helping to create peace in a chaotic world, and so I'm the one who's in debt to you. Isn't that amazing? Yeah? So somebody we don't even know is supporting each and every one of us in our aspirations. Yeah? So that's something that makes us feel grateful and also see that we have a responsibility to these people. And so to feel that responsibility, but to feel that encouragement, that somebody we don't even know from halfway around the world values what we're doing.